Welcome to the lecture on Religion in the Cultural Landscape. This is for AP Human Geography, Chapter 7, the chapter on religion. This entire lecture is going to be focused on how religion is seen in the cultural landscape and the type of impact that religion has on the cultural landscape. There are four aspects of how religion impacts the cultural landscape that we're going to examine in this lecture, and those four aspects are sacred sites, burial sites and rituals, architecture, and place names. Let's go ahead and get started with sacred sites. In this picture, this is an introductory slide, and in this picture we can see depicted Ayers Rock, also known as Uhuru, located in Australia. Now this is a sacred site for the Aboriginal people of Australia. However, this is not the cultural landscape. This is the natural landscape. So despite the fact that this is a sacred site, this is not an example of how religion impacts the cultural landscape. The first example of how religion impacts the cultural landscape in terms of sacred sites is the site of Mecca. So Mecca is the hearth of the Muslim religion or Islam, and it is the birthplace as well as the home of the Prophet Muhammad. And here in Mecca is located is the Great Mosque. We can see two minarets just in the center of our screen. Those are the entrances to the mosque, and this picture is a view of inside the Great Mosque. So how does this Great Mosque and Mecca in general, how does this impact the cultural landscape? Well, it's through the ongoing preservation of space. So located right in the center of this photo, we see a building draped in a black cloth. This is known as the Kaaba, and this is it holds inside of it a sacred rock that was actually sacred prior to, as a pre-Islamic site that was sacred. And so we have the ongoing preservation of this space for thousands of years at this point. We can see located all around the building in the center, the Kaaba, in the courtyard of the Great Mosque are thousands and thousands of people. Now, who are these people? These people are pilgrims. They're adherents to the Muslim religion, the religion of Islam. These are Muslims, and they have traveled from all over the world to make this pilgrimage to Mecca. It's one of the five pillars is to make the pilgrimage. And so this site has really impacted the cultural landscape in order to provide infrastructure for this pilgrimage and all of these pilgrims. The second sacred site that we're going to look at here is Jerusalem, and in particular, we'll see two slides on Jerusalem, but this is the first slide. In particular, we're looking at the building right in the center that has two blue domes and is adorned with crosses on top. So this building is called the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and this church is considered holy by all Christian faiths and is currently administered by both the Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholic faiths. So this is a site of prayer, it's a site of ritual, it's a site of yearly holidays and celebrations, and this is again an example of the ongoing preservation of space, and it's a place where pilgrims from around the world come visit. And in addition to adherents to the religion, tourists also come from around the world, whether or not they are Christian adherents, to visit this sacred site as well. The next picture that we're looking at is also located in Jerusalem, and this is an example of how two sacred sites can occupy almost the same space and cause conflict. The first one that we're looking at is this golden dome, and this golden dome here is called the Dome of the Rock, and it's a mosque. So this is a sacred site for the religion of Islam as well, and this is where the religion of Islam believes that Muhammad's soul rose to heaven from this site. So it's one of the most holy sites in all of Islam, and it's built on an area that used to be the location of the Jewish temple, so the most important site in Judaism. The Jewish temple has been destroyed for 2,000 years, and there's only one remnant of it left, and that's right here located in the bottom right corner in the red circle, and that's called the Western Wall or Wailing Wall. It's the only remnant left of the original Jewish temple, and it is the most holy or most sacred site in all of the entire Jewish religion. So we can see how there's a conflict here over space. Who is allowed to use this space? And the fact that these two sacred sites are in such close proximity, and the fact that many adherents of the Jewish faith believe that they would like to tear down the Dome of the Rock Mosque and rebuild the original Jewish temple, while of course that is not an idea shared by Muslims. So this creates tension over the use or conflict over the use of a specific sacred site here in Jerusalem. So now we're going to travel east to India, and we're visiting a city called Varanasi. Varanasi was referred to as Benares during the time of British colonization. And Varanasi is a sacred site because it's located on one of the holiest rivers in the Hindu religion, and that river is called the Ganges. So we can see in this picture the Ganges River, and we can see a series of stairs that were built. And so this again shows us the ongoing preservation of space, and it shows us we can see the people in the background here are again pilgrims who have visited this sacred site in order to bathe in the water of the Ganges, in order to make sacrifices, in order to perform rituals, in order to be cleansed. This picture shows what it looks like on specific days that are holy in the religion of Hinduism. And on these days, we have thousands and thousands of people come to the banks of the Ganges River here in Varanasi in order to do their prayers and do their rituals. So we can see a huge impact on the cultural landscape here with the influx of pilgrims. Now we're moving a little bit north, and we are visiting Bodh Gaya. Now, Bodh Gaya is also located in India, and Bodh Gaya is a sacred site for pilgrims in the Buddhist religion. It is one of many sacred sites in the Buddhist religion, but it's the only one that we're going to talk about. Here we can see a temple, and here we can see an offering under a Bodhi tree, a sacred tree for the Buddhist religion. And this site is sacred because it's believed that this is where the historical Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, Buddha Shakyamuni, where he attained enlightenment. So again, thousands of Buddhist pilgrims visit this site every year to do rituals and to pray. Also, the Dalai Lama, a leading figure of Tibetan Buddhism, he does a yearly teaching at this site, which attracts, again, thousands of followers. Okay, we're going to move on to the next topic in the lecture, religion in the cultural landscape. So this topic is burial sites, and burial sites and burial rituals have a huge impact on the cultural landscape. The picture that's starting off this section, burial sites, I actually took this photograph last summer on my trip to Croatia, and this is a graveyard. Obviously, the people who are occupying this graveyard, the people who are deceased, died in the conflict in 1991, the conflict with Serbia. And this is a Christian, obviously, but this is specifically a Catholic cemetery. So we can see how this imposes sort of a uniformity on the landscape. It really does change the landscape. Cemeteries require quite a bit of local land to be used, so it affects how local land is used. And it also makes the landscape very distinctive. For Christian cemeteries, and we're going to find out also for Islamic cemeteries and Jewish cemeteries, the aesthetic that they try to achieve is sort of a park-like aesthetic. So really, these cemeteries are modeled on a park-like structure. There's a lot of grass, there's trees, and then there's also, of course, markers to indicate a memorial for each individual person who has deceased. So we're going to compare this Christian cemetery here to a Muslim cemetery. This Muslim cemetery is actually located in Calgary. It's not a place I've ever been. It's just a photograph that I got off the internet. But this Muslim cemetery is very similar. We can see trees, we can see grass, we can see a lot of land being used, we can see a uniform landscape, and we can see markers or gravestones marking individual people who have deceased. So here's yet another Muslim cemetery, and we can see very similar. We have plants, we have grave markers, we have a uniform landscape. We have a lot of land usage, and we're going to compare that again to a Jewish cemetery and all the same elements that we saw in the previous two of the major monotheistic religions. We can see how there's a uniformity of the landscape. We can see how there's a large impact in terms of local land use, and we can see how it really does make the landscape very distinctive. So now we're going to move to a burial site and burial ritual, and that's the ritual of cremation. So in the Hinduism, or in the Hindu religion, cremation is very common. It's not universally practiced, not 100% of the time, but it is very common. And in cremation, first, funeral rites are observed, and then the bodies are burned. And so here we can see a body wrapped in a cloth that is being brought down to an area, a funeral pyre, to be burned, and then the remains or the ashes will be scattered into the Ganges River. So this again is a use of the Ganges River. This actual cremation location is very close to the earlier photograph that we saw, and we can see actually how this affects local land use as well. We can see how the chopping down of trees is necessary in order to burn the deceased, and we can see how it really does make the landscape distinctive. So all of that is true for Buddhism as well. Again, in Buddhism, cremation is quite common. It's not universally practiced, but it is common. And here is a picture of a Buddhist cremation ceremony where the Tibetan monks are burning a deceased monk. So the final type of burial site and burial practice that we're going to look at that has a very large impact on the cultural landscape are burial mounds. So burial mounds are typical of animistic or shamanistic religions. So these are pre-Christian, pre-monotheistic religions. And we can actually observe these burial mounds all around the world. This picture right here is these were burial mounds created in Europe, and I believe these are created by Celtic people in the British Isles. So that's a pre-Christian tradition that was abandoned once Christianity diffused to this part of the world. And here we can see Indian burial mounds. So this is in North America. Specifically this is in Minnesota. And these mounds, they're marked here by a historical marker, but these are over 1,500 years old. So this is a tradition that dates back to prior to European contact for the Native American Indians who occupied this region and practiced what we would refer to as shamanistic or animistic religions. So we can see how these burial mounds really make the landscape distinctive, and they also affect local land use. And this is yet another example of how religion has a large impact on the cultural landscape. So the next topic in this lecture is how religion is seen in the cultural landscape in terms of architecture. So specifically, we're looking at how special buildings are designed and used for worship, meditation, and spiritual functions. And we're really going to look at how these buildings create really distinctive landscapes that represent the religion and represent the religious history. They also restrict, in certain cases, the use of land in the surrounding area, and in some cases they attract tourists, and in all cases they attract pilgrims. So let's take a quick journey through the architecture of the religious landscape. So we're looking here at places of worship. So an example of a place of worship would be a Buddhist temple. This is a very distinctive style of Buddhist temple. This is from a Buddhist temple in Thailand. So we can see here how really the uniqueness of the landscape is created, how the history is respected, and we see really a regional version of Buddhism here, which is very interesting because in another Buddhist temple located here in Bodh Gaya, India, we can see how it's very different, but also very distinct. So two very different and distinct Buddhist temples with similar function, similar use. And yet another Buddhist temple here, and this is the Norbulinka, the winter palace of the Dalai Lama, located in Tibet. Obviously, he's not there anymore because he's been banished from Tibet. But this is another example of a very distinctive cultural landscape demonstrating the religious history here as a place of worship. So moving on, we're going to look at some Hindu temples, and another similar to Buddhism, the Hindu temples have a very regional distinctiveness. So from one part of India to another part, you're going to see temples with very different um, looks and different styles to them. But however, their function in the cultural landscape and how they shape or change the cultural landscape is the same. So we can see how it's making the landscape distinctive, and we can see how it is really using a lot of the space around it, and also how this and these temples especially attract large numbers of tourists. So here's more examples of Hindu temples. This is a temple from the south where the temples are carved with thousands of uh, deities and in full color. So this is a distinctive temple in the southern part of India. Okay, moving on, we're going to look at some mosques. So mosques are obviously the sites of worship for the religion of Islam or Muslim people. And this particular mosque is called the Mosque of Suleiman. So this is located in Istanbul, Turkey, and this mosque demonstrates two very distinct features that nearly all mosques have, which are the dome, you can see right here, and then the minaret. So despite the fact that around the world mosques look different, they all have these distinctive features of the dome and the minaret. The minaret obviously very important in the call to prayer. So as we look around the world, like in Hinduism or Buddhism, we see a variety of different styles in architecture. Here's another example of a mosque located in the Middle East. Um, Here's a mosque located in Iran, so that would be more of Central Asia. And this is called the Blue Mosque, located in Iran. And we can see how it takes up a lot of space. So really the surrounding area is affected, and we can see how it makes the landscape very distinct and unique, represents the religious history, and also, in some cases, attracts large amounts of tourists. So moving on for Christianity, this is the Vatican Church, located obviously in Vatican City. It's the holiest site in the religion of Roman Catholicism, and we can see here it has its own unique and distinctive style. Here is a Catholic church located in Brazil, and we can find Catholic churches with their the spires. So we can see here both of these have unique spires, and these are distinctive of Catholic churches all around the world. So other Christian churches have similar but not but unique architecture in and of themselves. So we have a Lutheran church here. This is located in North America, and we can see this Baptist church here. So what they have in common, again, is making the landscape distinctive, land usage around the place of worship, and then also attracting tourists. Here is a synagogue, so it's similar to basically all of the other structures that we've seen. So synagogue being the most important building in the Jewish religion. And this will be the last one we see. This is a European synagogue built about 250, 300 years ago. So the final aspect of how religion is seen in the cultural landscape is through place names. And we happen to live in a place that is named because of religious purposes. So the thing about naming or placing a religious toponym on a place is so the way that place names impact the cultural landscape is through promoting regional distinctiveness and also confirming the importance of religion in everyday life. So when we see names like San Francisco, which is named for the Catholic Saint Francis, or Saint Francis de Assisi, we can see how the people who placed that name, and in this case it was Spanish explorers or conquistadores, they were really confirming how important religion was to them, and that's why they used this toponym, St. Francis. So we can see also Islamabad, Pakistan is another example. So this is obviously named after the religion of Islam. Pakistan identifying itself as a Muslim country. So Islamabad again confirms the importance of religion in everyday life and promotes regional distinctiveness. San Diego is another example. This is very similar to San Francisco, name bestowed by the first Spanish explorers. St. Paul, Minnesota. St. Paul, Minnesota is similar to San Francisco and San Diego. This is a Catholic. This is a Catholic saint, um, but as opposed to being named by Spanish explorers, this name was placed by later Western European explorers, Saint Paul, and we have Saint Paul of South America, which is Sao Paulo. It's also named for Saint Paul, and that's found in Brazil. So we can see through all of these examples how use of religiously inspired toponyms promotes regional distinctiveness and confirms the importance of religion in everyday life. So this concludes the lecture on religion in the cultural landscape.